Hello YouTube, Valley Gal here, and you guessed it, it's time for another album review. Today I'm reviewing this new Ryan Beatty project, Calico. This is Ryan's third LP, following 2018's Boy in Jeans and 2020's Dreaming of David. Ryan's main collaborator on this album is Ethan Gruska, who is one of Phoebe Bridgers' main collaborators, which definitely tracks given the more acoustic vibes that this album has versus his last two LPs. In my opinion, this was a great direction for him to go in. I think where he kind of fumbled on his 2020 LP, Dreaming of David, was that he did see what worked with Boy in Jeans in 2018, but he kind of stayed in that comfort zone just through a different tone, and in my opinion that led the album to just be kind of muddy. My biggest grievance with Ryan's past two albums was the lyrical content, to be honest, but I feel like he definitely improved on this album in that regard. For example, even in a simple way on the first track, Ribbons, Ryan's referring to this you throughout the song, and you kind of get a sense that he is talking to himself. Kind of like, can I ask you a question? Mic drop, Gaylor, mic drop. But then at the end of the song, this is confirmed with the line, I'm making faces at the one who stares at me at the end of the glass. This obviously being himself, because when you finish a drink, you get it. I love the line, it's brave to be nothing to no one at all. I don't think that is said enough in the culture, and I appreciate Ryan for saying that. Overall, I think this is a solid opening track, especially given the fact that a lot of songs on this album have instrumental outros. However, I do think they could have pushed it a little bit further even, melancholic and nostalgia vibe-wise. It's clear that's what they're going for, but I think it misses the mark a tiny bit. The next track, Bruises on the Peach, I feel also deals with themes that should be discussed more in the culture. Basically just kind of the attempt, at least, at boundary setting. He's cutting the bruises off the peach. He's cutting out the things in his life that are outdated, superfluous, or are just getting in the way of a better reality. However, lyrically, this song does feel the most similar to some of his past songs in the sense that it's kind of unclear what Ryan is trying to say, and you do eventually get there. The person, this love interest that, is the love interest throughout this album, clearly acts sometimes as a liability for Ryan, and this person would be a bruise that could be cut off the peach. But then in the bridge, which, side note, I love melodically, we kind of get the sense that he feels like he is in this perpetual internal cycle of love always holding him down. He's like, what the fuck is that about? And this is definitely a relatable concept. I personally could totally relate to this. But for a semi-simple concept, it shouldn't be that difficult to string together. The song definitely could have been written maybe in a more effective way. But then there's lines like careless like a comet that I'm love. Slay to that line. The next track, Cinnamon Bread, is definitely a bit of an improvement lyrically from the previous track. I love how this idea of people having something to say or not having anything to say changes throughout the song and kind of carries you through the context of this person being a liability to Ryan, given that all the men and all the women this person has loved all have something to say. And at the beginning of the song, Ryan kind of expresses that when this person opens up, it cuts him to the bone, so he just starts, getting frisky with him, and then he has nothing to say. Then he shuts his mouth. But then this idea that love always lasts for Ryan, and that can be a bit of a trap for him, is shown after the line, all these people you loved, they all have something to say, but it couldn't keep me away. And then I feel that good guy line has got to be a Frank reference. This song also sounds so Frank to me. The next track, Andromeda, continues this idea of Ryan seeing these problems in this relationship, but for many different reasons. He chooses to grasp onto the positive that he can take from it instead of fully pushing it away, which would push away the positive things, but also the negative things. The line, it's not everything I wished for, but I didn't care, just liked having you there, is just very telling to me, represents this idea very well. The next track, Bright Red, has two guest writers, Sir Dylan, whose credits include SZA, Solange, Rosalia, etc., and Michael Uzowuru, who has worked with Frank, Beyonce, SZA, and my queen Twigs. I love the harmonies on this album. They are very Frank coded to me, especially the one that's sky, sky. There's a cute little Boy in Jeans reference in verse 2 with Speed Up But Don't Crash. He has a song on that album called Speed and a song on that album called Crash. trash. So I feel like he's kind of like talking to himself from that era, trying to like give advice. Overall, this song is just like, life is crazy for all its ups and downs and beautiful things and horrible things, and ultimately we kind of have no control over it. And I feel like these ideas are very like sprinkled throughout the rest of these songs on this album, but this track is like focused on that theme of the album. The next track, Hunter, is probably one of my favorite songs on the album. The production and instrumentation is perfect for the narrative theme of the song being hunting, nature, etc. The lyrical progressions in the verses are so good. Like the way he starts talking about, you know, these moments in time he experienced while hunting, and then relating it back to himself in those moments. He's not just saying like, hunting made me realize this. It's like he saw the man holding the deer, and in that specific moment he realized he had been living in his head. And as the song develops, it just overall has this theme of a turning point, or an epiphany, if you will. The next song, White Teeth, is another one of my faves lyrically. One of the guest writers is Carter Lang, who is one of SZA's main collaborators. For me, the line, "Some left, but the right ones stay." I know it seems obvious, but it just absolutely hits for me. And it's another thing that we do not discuss enough that we all need to be hearing. We need to be hearing that, so thank you, Ryan, for putting that in a song. I feel like this song just being about like timing in life, and again, how like we don't fully have control over it, and you just kind of have to accept that. Obviously, thematically fits very well with the rest of the album, especially the previous two tracks, Hunter and Bright Red. The next track, Multiple Endings, I also love lyrically. Again, a simple moment lyrically in the song that just absolutely gets me every time is "You were right, Texas is hot at night." I don't know, something about that line. I love his performance of that line as well. Perfect example of effective simplicity. It's also a really good example of kind of like the conversational and pedestrian almost lyrical aesthetics throughout this album that he certainly has played with in the past on his previous two albums, but he definitely does it most successfully on this album. Also, randomly in the song, like verse 2 feels like a thesis statement of the album thematically. I can't really speak to like the placement of that, but it certainly jumped out to me as he's talking about blood washing off. He mentions his lover, and then at the end he says, "Someday I'll disappear like the air underneath." So it kind of like checks the three main like themes of the album off just in that one verse. And then the final track, Little Faith, is definitely a solid ending track for this album. It's not my favorite lyrically, but it does wrap up the album thematically well. Overall, I think this album is definitely an improvement for Ryan. It's definitely my favorite album of his so far, and thematically and sonically, it is definitely his most cohesive project. But I do wish it varied a little bit more, or I wish that he/the people he worked with experimented a little bit more. On this album, he definitely got out of his comfort zone a little bit, but then he kind of created this new comfort zone, and he didn't really dip his toe out into anything surrounding it. In conclusion, I just wish that he took more risks. So given all of this, I'm going to give this album a 6. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, you know the gist. All of my silly little social media accounts are linked below in the description, alongside the link to my Patreon, where you can watch the reactions to all the albums that I review on this channel. My reactions for the new Lana album, Boy Genius, and the new Yeji album are all up, and the reaction to this album will be up very shortly. And I'd like to give a congratulations to Ryan for being the first man that I review on this channel. I mean, he's a gay man, but still. On that note, I will see you next time. Bye!